Howdy everyone, Sarcy here, and this is Payday 2 on the Xbox 360 in 2023. I've been playing a lot of this in the PS3 version lately, enough so that I felt like making a video on not only these two versions, but possibly all of the console versions, as I have this game on every platform, it being my favorite game of all time and all. I was originally gonna start with the PS3 version, as that's actually the one I've been playing the most of these past few weeks, but I just found it easier to start off here, and they are basically the same version with a few minor noteworthy technical differences. Plus, it's also more fitting that I start here, as the first version that I actually owned was the Xbox 360 version, of which I had for a few months before finally getting the PC version. So there's a few things I want to cover in this video. I want to show how outdated this version of the game is, what little has changed from the original release, and see how many people are still playing, as well as make a few comparisons between this and other console releases. I'll try my best not to bounce around topics in this video, as there's a lot I want to talk about, so let's get started. So as you know, Payday 2 has changed quite a lot over the years, getting new weapons, new characters, new features, and multiple different overhauls to how many things work. There's pre-planning, a level up system where you get XP based on how many bags you secure, the inclusion of drivable vehicles, a whole new skill system with the ability to have multiple different loadouts, better bots, and 3 of them, having to answer pagers even when you make a guard cuff themselves, having more than one cuffed enemy, all of this and so much more that basically the 360 and PS3 players never got to see. Overkill very reluctantly dropped the armored transport heist, the 2-gauge weapon packs, Infamy 1.0, and not the actual heist, but the Sirens in the Distance music track from the Go Bank heist in 2014, and then just completely abandoned this version. As a sort of apology, each console version got an exclusive mask, a mask that to this day has not appeared in any future console release or the PC version. The Xbox 360 got a knockoff Halo Spartan helmet. It's a decent looking mask in my opinion, and it's kind of a shame that it's still locked behind such an old version of the game, but at the same time, it's kind of a cool relic that you get to see here and nowhere else. Speaking of old versions, one thing I'd like to point out real quick is that I have reason to believe that the Xbox 360 version may be a slightly older version than the PS3 one. It doesn't have any actual content differences besides the PS3 exclusive mask, but the infamy menu gives me reason to believe that the Xbox 360 version is more outdated. Whenever I get around to it, I'll show you the same menu right here on the PS3, and you'll see why I'm bringing this up. Which brings me to a little fun fact about the vanilla version of both. I think the Xbox 360 version originally shipped a beta build because the weapon stats on the Xbox 360 weren't numeric like both the PS3 and PC versions were. I remember being confused by this one time when I went over to my friend's house and played Payday 2 on his PS3 and saw that the weapon stats actually matched that of the PC version, whereas the Xbox version was just some sort of bar, I believe. This was eventually fixed when they gave the console versions updates, but it makes me wonder why that was the case. In terms of how the game plays, the best way I can describe this version of Payday 2 compared to how it is now is that you don't feel as overpowered as you do in current versions. When playing on any newer version, you can go right into overkill difficulty heist and basically treat it as if it's the normal difficulty to play. You're rarely ever going to struggle, maybe have the occasional slip up if you're less familiar with a newer heist or just have some bad luck, but otherwise, you're just going to breeze the hell through any heist you play on Overkill. Now, in this version, the difficulty is actually difficult. I mean, it's not like super impossible, but it's enough to where you're actually going to have a decent challenge. If you're a new player or you're a lower level, be it from just starting out or having infamy, you're a lot more likely to get shredded. Hell, I've even seen people of a lot higher levels, even max ranked, mess up quite frequently. You also don't have all the build options like perk decks and stuff to assist you. In fact, all you've got is the old skill system. Back in the day, I never had a problem with the skill system beyond the fact that you couldn't have multiple builds, but going back from the current one to the old one, it's definitely a different experience that you'll have to get used to and is on the harder side, and this is completely ignoring the fact that you only get one build. If you're skilled up for loud heists and you want to stealth, unless you decide you want to wipe your current skills and respec while also paying a crap ton of your money towards it because skills cost money back then, you're gonna have to go bare bones with a plain suit and a silencer with no stealth skill. Either that or sit back and let someone else who is maining a stealth build take the lead. You also only get 2 pager answers unless you purchase the skill, something that was eventually given to everyone when the new skill system came into play. It's definitely something that's not the most fun to go back to, but I wouldn't say that it's a game ruiner. You could still go back to this version and have a great time. Now, one thing I definitely want to bring up is how slow you level up. I mentioned earlier as to how the game was eventually updated to reflect XP earning based on how many bags you got, inspiring heists like Cook-Off, where it's basically rats, but you can just cook as much as you want and just soar through leveling up. But that's not the case in this version. The game is very stingy with XP in this. Back in the day when all the versions were at this update level, the only way you'd be leveling up is by spending hours grinding rats in Firestarter. Preferably rats, as you'd blow the lab and immediately escape without having to wait for the van to come like you do in the current versions. Also, pro jobs. Remember those? Basically, a pro job was a heist in which if you failed, you didn't get a retry and you just go straight back to the menu. Those are still here, and you're pretty much going to have to keep playing those over and over for maximum reward. You'll pretty much want to be playing nothing but pro job rats on overkill difficulty over and over to level up, and you'll have to do it multiple times just to level up a single time. Anything lower difficulty and non-pro job, unless you're just playing to play, which is perfectly fine, you're basically wasting your time. A lot different compared to now, where you can complete a single heist and it's like boom, you just went from level 0 to almost being halfway to max level. Like I said, this version is still fun to play because it's still Payday 2, but this and the PS3 version are the most grindy versions of the game. So far we've gone over some of the differences, but we haven't answered the big question yet. How many people are still playing this? Unfortunately, compared to the PS3 version, not too many. As seen here, when I first went to get footage, I only found one lobby with one guy. Later on, I did get a full lobby, as well as a few other lobbies to pick from, but usually this version is not heavily populated, and as such, you'll often end up having to play less rewarding heists on lower difficulties that you'd normally not play, as you can't really be as picky in this version. With the PS3 version, however, you can hop on at pretty much any time of the day and find multiple lobbies with multiple players in them and have a much larger selection. The Xbox 360 version, I usually only find a couple active at a time, and later on into the night I have trouble finding anyone playing at all. I'm going to chalk this up to the PS3 version being the only console version that you can play without having to pay for online, which probably contributes to why there's plenty of people still playing multiplayer games on PS3 in general. Now on the flip side, I noticed that a lot more people use mics on the 360 version, whereas with the PS3, I don't even recall having ever heard anyone use a mic, period. I had one instance where people were actually doing a pretty job at communicating during a stealth heist, which is kind of a rarity across all console versions of Payday 2. It actually made me feel kind of nostalgic, not just for the earlier days of Payday 2, but of playing online on the Xbox 360 in general. Another thing I noticed is that most people I come across have bought the DLC, which can be seen with them starting the heist with grenades in their inventory. Now let's talk about the game's performance. Keep in mind that this is running on an Xbox 360, which came out way back in 2005. There's definitely very noticeable performance differences between the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. Hell, there's some differences between even the newer console releases. The main one that I want to point out in that aspect is that the original console releases have an unlocked frame rate and thus are capable of reaching 60 FPS. And not only are they capable, but I'll go as far as saying that I've noticed that the Xbox 360 version managed to stay not necessarily perfectly at, but pretty close to around that quite well. It does have some frame drops, both versions do, but it almost always at the very least stays above 30 FPS, which all future console releases are capped at, and at times even struggle maintaining that. It's one of the reasons why I still enjoy playing both the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions, as I find it kind of ridiculous that a game running on hardware from 2005 and 2006 is managing to outperform its newer versions on hardware from 2013 and 2017. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll be able to see the full frame rate in this recording, as my capture card might only capture 30 FPS, but you should still be able to notice any stutters. Now, the reason I mentioned specifically the Xbox 360 version having great performance in this video and not the PS3 one, well, you're just gonna have to wait until the PS3 video to find out. In terms of bugs, this version definitely has some of the classic ones that never got patched out, especially in terms of desync. There's often times where when you're not the host and a bot goes down, you'll see them continuing to walk around clear across the map, sometimes completely outside of the boundaries, way out from where they actually are before they settle down and drop to where they actually went down at which point you'll sometimes almost have no time to revive them. Of course, this pretty much means that unless you've got a really good connection with the host, that it's often up to the host to pick up a down bot. The same sometimes happens with other players as well, one time resulting in me pretty much having to let the hosting player just go into custody because I couldn't even reach them. One glitch I remember always happening is someone's custody counter reaching 0, and despite going into custody, their character still remains there on the ground. This would also make it so that when they get out of custody, Bane won't stop repeating how they're back from custody. This also could lead to another glitch where if that player left and someone else took their place, that previous player's body would still remain and be interactable with. The last time I had that one happen on PC was back around when the Hotline Miami heist came out, which should tell you just how long ago these bugs stopped being a problem on there. I also had it affect the bots to where there was 2 different bots of Dallas running around alongside the other bot and player, making for a 5-player heist, but that went away as soon as someone else joined as Dallas. I'm not sure if that was just a client-side glitch or if the host was seeing the same thing as me, but I was able to shout at both of the Dallas bots, and it was a pretty entertaining glitch. The only other technical bug I encountered while recording was a lobby I joined where the only audio was the music, the object notifier sound, and grenade explosions, which I remember used to be a semi-common glitch that could occur on even the PC version in the earlier days. So, as you can see, going back from pretty much any other versions, you can tell that despite being the same game, the experience is very different. But despite this, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's still the game that became my favorite game nearly 10 years ago and has retained the title to this day. Now, is this the ideal way to play this game in 2023? Absolutely not. Quite the opposite, in fact, as if you don't have the PC version for some reason 10 years later and don't see yourself having it anytime soon, if ever, I'd recommend one of the newer console versions, especially as they're available on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, and both of them, of course, are playable on the newest consoles. But still, if you have an Xbox 360, an Xbox Live Gold account, and come across a used copy of this for around $5 or less, because that's what you can usually find it for, it wouldn't hurt to give this version a look. It's still a fantastic game and a great experience. The only thing you'll really be missing out on is the heaps of additional content and the quality of life updates. And that's pretty much it for this video. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'm not sure when the video on the PS3 version will be out, but it's the one that I'm going to be working on next, and should I decide to continue with the other console versions, I'll probably move on to the Switch one after. And with that said, this is WarSarcy back on the Game Clips channel, and I'm out.